Good morning, students. Today we will be learning about viruses. The fact: about 80% of infectious diseases are spread by hand contact. Washing your hands with soap and water is a simple and effective way to prevent the spread of colds and the flu. So here we discussed infectious diseases, those diseases which can be spread through contact from one person to another. So by physical contact, when a disease spread, that is known as infectious diseases. So cold and flu, they are both viral diseases and they can spread from one person to another by physical contact. Okay, what's our objective for today? We will be able to understand the status of viruses in the classification system, to describe the features of virus, and we will be able to discuss the characteristics of viruses. The status of viruses. We studied classification system in previous classes, in previous lessons, but we didn't see that viruses are present in any of the classification group, in any of the kingdom of classification. That is why they have been described as organisms at the edge of life, because they are neither considered as living nor considered as non-living. They are on the borderline of biology and chemistry, because they simply contain a DNA and some proteins. So they are biochemical molecules, they can be called, since they resemble organisms in that they possess genes and reproduces by creating multiple copies of themselves through self-assembly. They don't have any of the 7 characteristics of life. The only character is that they can reproduce, but for reproduction purpose they also need a host cell. They cannot reproduce by themselves. They have to use the host cell machinery for reproduction. The structure of a virus. All true viruses contain nucleic acid, either DNA, deoxyribonucleic acid, or RNA, the ribonucleic acid, and some proteins. So the basic structure of viruses consist of these 3 particles, 2 particles basically, because the nucleic acid may be either DNA or RNA. They both cannot lie in a single organism or in a single virus. A single virus didn't contain both of them at a time. They may either contain DNA or RNA along with the proteins. The nucleic acid encodes the genetic information unique for each virus. Every virus has its own genetic material or own genes to encode their proteins. The infective extracellular form of a virus is called as the viron. Viron is the outside layer of a virus which is infective in nature. Not in all cases, but in some cases it is infective, so that is called as viron. It contains at least one unique protein synthesized by specific genes in the nucleic acid of that virus. The outermost shell of the virus is known as capsid, which is made up of proteins, and that capsid surrounds the nucleic acid of that virus. Nucleic acid may be either DNA or RNA, whatever the case is, but will be surrounded by a protein coat. Okay, certain viruses also have other proteins internal to the capsid. Inside the capsid, like the outside capsid is made up of proteins, but there are not only those proteins which make the capsid, but there are some other proteins which act as enzymes for the viruses or for the synthesis of viral proteins and the DNA. So these proteins, they also lie on inside the capsid of a virus. Here is the structure of a virus. Can you see some differences among them? Have a quick look into these 2 structures and find out at least 2 or 3 differences. Okay, bacteriophage and influenza, these are 2 model viruses. In bacteriophage, the nucleic acid is the DNA and in influenza virus the nucleic acid is the RNA. The influenza virus protein coat is further coated by or surrounded by another membrane which is also made up of proteins, and it is called as the membrane envelope. The bacteriophage, it contains tail fibers, and these fibers are used for the attachment to bacterial cell. Bacteriophage are viruses which infect bacterial cells. So these fibers, tail fibers, are used for the attachment to the bacterial cells. And the spikes on the influenza, the purple color spikes, they are used for the attachment of these influenza viruses to the human cells. There are some other structures which act like viruses. They are called as viroids and prions. Viroids are virus-like, are disease-causing organisms that contain only nucleic acid and have no structural proteins. So, viruses contain nucleic acid enclosed in a protein coat. But when there is only nucleic acid and there is no protein coat or envelope present, so that structure is known as viroids. Prions are the structures which contain proteins and nucleic acid, but their nucleic acid is not enclosed in that protein. Instead, they are tightly bounded to each other, like these nucleic acid and proteins. They are bounded to each other but not enclosed in that protein coat. So these are called as prions. Both of them are highly infectious molecules. Okay. And viroids and prions, they cause different types of diseases in mammals, in humans, and in plants. Here are structures of viroids and prions. Okay, the characteristics of viruses. So viruses have an inner core of nucleic acid surrounded by a protein coat known as an envelope or a capsid. Most viruses range in size from 20 to 250 nanometer. They are too small that they are able to infect a bacterial cell. Viruses are inert, nucleoprotein filtrable agents. Filtrable agent means they can be filtered through a filter paper. Viruses are obligate intracellular parasites. Obligate parasite means that they have to be a parasites. They have to be dependent upon other organisms. They are nothing without a host cell. Or when they comes out of the host cells, they are considered as crystals or non-living crystals. They occupy a space in between living and non-living because they are crystallizable and non-living outside the host body. Viruses depend fully on the host cell machinery to continue their life metabolically inefficient. They are responsible for a number of dreadful diseases in human and plants, just like nowadays we are facing a new disease, that is COVID-19. It is also caused by a virus. Thank you guys.